Mattia Binotto ambushes Daniel Ricciardo on track, causing him to bail out in Q2, probably. Alonso takes a top 5 start and Oscar Piastri is in Formula One for 2022, kind of. Hello there, my name is James Baldwin and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we review the qualifying and practice in a pre-drinking fashion of the Qatar Grand Prix. And I'm joined, as always, by my friends and yours. It's Campy, the fiddler on the roof. How you doing, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
Good. Nothing like a joke getting in just before we start recording.
Yep. The old in-jokes, They're perfect for everybody out there.
Yep. Tommy T, how you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
It's your favourite LeBron James podcast. That's what this is. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Could have picked who wrote that one.
We are. Yes, well, I will discuss that more in our race review podcast. But look, thanks so much for joining us here on Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. And welcome if you found us via TikTok. That's right, we are now on TikTok. Campy does a shoey on TikTok. He never thought he'd see the day.
Wow.
Mark K reminding us that TikTok is a Chinese company. So we'll just see how that plays out when we talk about what's happening with Alfa Romeo next year shortly. But a massive thank you to Ash and to Lewis for doing all of the amazing things that they're doing on social media. Really appreciate that. Thank you to you, of course, as well for subscribing to the podcast, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on Apple or Spotify or Google, whatever you're doing, we really appreciate it. But lads, let's get straight into talking about some news ahead of talking about the Qatar Grand Prix. Tommy T, starting with you, the good news, I suppose, firstly, is that Oscar Piastri is going to be in Formula One in 2022, kind of.
To be honest, like we kind of have spoken about it a few times now, I think, and we think this is probably the better of the options rather than taking some time out to go to a different formula and getting your hands out of that kind of team. He's going to be there, and from what it sounds like, he's going to do a fair bit of work and practice, and he's going to be included into that team. So, like we've heard Formula One drivers, I think Jenson Button said it best on one of his podcasts that he was talking about. He's like, there's so much to learn outside of the car with the team. So if he can get a head start on that going into his F1 career before he even gets to drive, that's also a positive. So we can't forget that side of it too. So I'm excited. I think this is the right decision. And he's got Mark Webber, obviously, as his manager, guiding him and kind of going, don't do what I did. Let's figure out some of the right decisions and let's be a bit luckier than I was, say. So I think it's really positive for Oscar.
It's good news, Campy. I mean, there was a lot of conversation around when he announced it about who he would be replacing in the Alpine team, be it Ocon and Alonso. Everyone's saying, oh, well, when Fernando retires, then he can slot in. No. Ocon, get the hell out of the way, buddy. No one gives a crap anymore. No one cares. And put Alonso next side Piastri. That's going to be bloody amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Look, Ocon had a good start to this year. It took Fernando a bit, and unfortunately for Oscar, Ocon got that long-term contract. But we know that contracts aren't worth the money they're printing on these days. If a team wants you out, you're out. So
I'm putting that down, James.
How many contracts do you sign that are printed on money, Kevin?
You know what I'm trying to say.
I'm writing it down.
So
please write that down, Tommy.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's the right thing for Oscar, but as I've said before, Alpine needs to get him in the car as regularly as possible, not just testing. They need to give him at least 2 days in the preseason testing for next year. They need to get him into as many FP1 sessions as possible as he learns throughout the year. Maybe not so early, but later on in the back half of next year. The only thing it's a bit of a shame for me is that I think Alfa Romeo would have been a really good destination with Valtteri Bottas there next year. I think that would have been an incredible learning experience coming in the car. Yeah. We know he's shown some very solid pace at times, albeit in the team. I mean, you expect to win in that car, but he's beaten everyone else that's in it. You know, on the trot, F3, F2 this year as well. Probably it's going to take a monumental stuff up on his behalf to lose this championship. So look, either way, I think it would have been a good decision for him, but we just need to trust the process, I think, behind closed doors and what's happening, and he will get a drive in F1 at some stage. Just hope he doesn't have to wait 2 or 3 years to get it. So,
yep, no, absolutely right. Well, it'll be good to see him in a car for 2023 whatever car that might be. As I said, hopefully it is in that Alpine alongside Fernando. Of course, though, that means that the second worst kept secret in Formula One for 2021 was announced that Guan Yu Zhou is going to Alfa Romeo. So congratulations to that downtown Shanghai Alfa Romeo dealership for spoiling it for the rest of us. But also, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a done deal after the Andretti conversations really came out. I think that's probably delayed the announcement more than anything.
Yep.
But look, I mean, Guan Yu Zhou copped a lot of hate on social media for this. I don't necessarily think we should be hating him. It's not like the same kind of environment where Nikita Mazepin came in. There was that incident and everyone was like, hang on a second, that's not okay. Yes, the guy's been driving in Formula 2 for 3 years. Whatever. Look, the guy seems nice enough, to be perfectly honest. All the video content we've seen out of Formula 2, you know, he's happy to be here. The fact that he was wearing his Alonso get-up, I think there's a photo of him in 2004 or 5 with the Renault get-up. Incredibly cool, you know, inside of the track. It's good. It's a dream. He seems like he's a nice enough guy. Hopefully he has some pace. Does he deserve the hate? No. Does the Oscar deserve the seat more? Yes. But this is Formula 1. It is what it is. But Campy, for what we can expect next year, I suppose, now for Guan Yu Zhou, obviously Valtteri Bottas, as you just said before, would be a great mentor for Oscar Piastri. He's also going to be a good mentor for Guan Yu Zhou if Zhou is willing to learn, which it seems like he is.
Yeah, I think you said that absolutely right. He doesn't deserve the hate that he's getting at the moment. But I think the problem and the reason he's getting the hate is not because of who he is and like what he's done in his career thus far. It's because of the whole China issue around the world at the moment and people's opinions of China and F1, you know, committing to doing business with them in a political climate that's not great. And that's the reason he's getting hate. This kid's done nothing wrong. It's got nothing to do with the people of China it's clearly to do with the government and the way they handle things. I mean, this story with the tennis player going missing after calling out one of their politicians over there, I think that's going to happen. Like, at some level, it has to have some global ramifications for China and the world and how we deal with them in a sporting context. I think what's happening over there is wrong. In saying that, for Zhou, I think it's tough for him. He's in a tough place because again, he's a paid driver, so he's the fourth really big paid driver out of 20 drivers on the grid at the moment. So I mean, it's not a great look for our sport, but he's got a great opportunity and. You know, you've made it to the pinnacle now. You got to make your chances work, and let's hope he's not somebody that fails to take the chance when he gets it, because no one will care about why he got the seat, where he came from in 5 years if he's a solid driver and he's competing and he's doing everything he needs to do. That'll go really quick. So, yeah, look, we've got to congratulate him for getting his seat. Do I think he deserved it over some others? Yep. No, he didn't deserve it. Some others. Drivers could have got it, but hey, he's got a shot, so take it with both hands, and we will chat about it, no doubt, over the next year, a couple of years, and see how he goes. So,
I think the big thing for me, Tommy T, was just how excited Oscar was for him too. You know, there was no holding back. At the end of the day, they're academy teammates in a lot of ways, so they've been operating in the same space. You know, yes, Joe's been in for 3 years, but Prema, who Piastri's racing for, is a better team. And whilst there's identical machinery, the setups are different. And we know that Prema team has been on top for years and years and years and years. They have the best mechanics in there. Not that I'm saying that it's necessarily the best, the better car,
and the best
but potentially Joe's driving, outperforming the setup that he's got in the F2 car. Anyway, I know we'll talk about it lots going forward, but my point is, it's really great that Oscar is going to be involved in Formula One next year, absolutely, as the reserve driver. It's great to see him at the Qatar Grand Prix on the pit wall already, that Alpine are, bring him into the fold. Hopefully they can sort out who their team principal is in the next couple of weeks, because, as we said last time around, Otmar has been rumoured to have gone. Then he put out a thing saying, my social media team has decided to say that this is not happening, so therefore it's not happening. He's obviously very good at skirting the question like he was with Checo last year. But hey, if he ends up there in Alpine and it's good for Oscar, then fantastic. Really, what really cares? But I suppose the biggest thing, Tommy, is Giovinazzi. Not only is he leaving, but it was very quickly announced that he was going to Formula E, to Dragon Penske Formula E team. So there's some pedigree in that Penske name. going into Formula E, which is going to be good. If we're going to go into a fourth generation Formula E car the year after next, so there's potentially going to be some interesting space there. I'm just happy he's going racing somewhere. I think it would have been a big shame if he had to sort of do a Grosjean, which is like, okay, well, now I've got to really fight to find somewhere. Is it IndyCar? Is it Formula E? Is it DTM? Whatever it is. But clearly he was well aware weeks ago that this was going to happen. So he's had the ability to make those decisions and sort out his career for the future.
Yeah, and he's not without talent. We know that he's quick. I think he was unlucky, like we've seen so many other Formula One drivers be in the past. It's just wrong place, wrong time. You just didn't get the opportunities. The car wasn't there like it was for Leclerc like a couple of years before. Just little things didn't break his way. So he's just got to take the opportunities he can get. And if he does go to E and absolutely annihilate it, there might be a chance for a reserve driver role or things like that. That's not out of the realm. We've seen Formula E drivers still remain as reserve drivers on occasion and doing other things. So it's not the end. We've seen many drivers come back, but I think this is probably the right decision, I think, for Alpha. Maybe we've had a crack with you. Let's move on. Let's do this pay driver thing. Do that and then
I know that Formula E is often compared to Formula One. Let me do a quick cross-podcast promotion here. I interview tomorrow, I've already interviewed, that's how podcasting works, but the episode with Alejandro Agag, who is the owner of Extreme E and the owner of, CEO, I should say, of both Extreme E and Formula E. And I asked him this question, is F1 and Formula E compared too often and should it be? And the answer you'll just have to listen to because you'll have to go to the podcast to listen to. But the whole point for him is, yes,
there's
a speed
right
difference. We're also 7 years into the sport. Formula One, 70 years into the sport. Like, we're trying, and I know I want it to be faster. So Gen 4 will hopefully get to that step. And Formula E, like a couple of races that I watched this year, was interesting. I know people, again, it compares a lot, but my point is there's racing and it's good racing and there's different podiums happening all the time. So hopefully for Giovinazzi, that means that he can have some good wheel-to-wheel racing. His talent can shine through and he can grab some podiums because I think he deserves that. And it will totally be a completely different change mentally for him from coming from the back in Formula One. All right, let's talk about what happened in Brazil because we finally got this onboard Campy about the Max v. Lewis going into turn 3, 4. Where is it? Turn, three and a half, let's say, with him not really putting any steering input in.
Turn 5.
Oh, look how wrong I was. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're right. Damn it. But interesting, though, because I don't understand why the footage wasn't available straight away. Like, we had onboard footage of steering wheels straight away with all the other big incidents that happened with Hamilton and Verstappen through the year, including at Silverstone and, of course, at Monza. But in your mind, Campy, were they right to just say, play on, you don't have the right to sort of look at that in retrospect? We just got to keep going? Yeah,
look, seeing that footage confirmed to me everything that I thought happened anyway. Max he broke way too late. He was never going to make the ideal apex of the corner. Not that he has to make an apex of the corner, but what he did in doing so, he didn't get full lock on the steering wheel until he was well past the apex and, sort of halfway across the road into that turn 5, which pushed Hamilton wide. Now, at the time, I thought it was a racing incident. I think it should have been kept a racing incident, and I'm glad no penalty's been dished out. In saying that, though, I think it's cheeky from Max the way he did it. I mean, we think to a few years ago when he was moving under braking and he was positioning his car in the right way. Yeah. I think the reason why Mercedes, after the new data came out and the videos came out, they set a precedence that if something like that happens again on track, they have got some clear precedent from the past about what Max is actually doing. Do I think it's dirty? No, I just think it was cheeky and it was a very smart way of driving without, causing a crash because that's not what we want to see. So I think Mercedes has been pretty quite tactical about it. I think it's cheeky from Max, but as I said, we've come a long way in this sport from drivers just yeeting other drivers off to win world championships. So
happened. It's happened.
Wow.
Bloody hell.
Mark it down.
Date time,
The
10:56
21st of
a.m.
November.
I don't even know what Yeti
Yeah.
means, but you've used it before, so it works for me. So
Wow. This is a good day for Campy quotes. The thing that came out of it that was really interesting to me, Tommy T, was Charles Leclerc, because he then said, well, if the stewards are going to let that kind of racing happen, like that's now the standard that's been set. We've had a conversation about it, everything. Like I'm now going to change my driving style based on that information, which I thought was really interesting because it's obviously now has ramifications for the other 18 cars, doesn't it?
It's so hard because you're always looking for loopholes in F1. We know this with regulations, with all those kind of things. The drivers are always looking for driving style things like how much can I move under braking? Like I know I'm not supposed to move at all, but you'll let a little bit go. Where's the leeway? What's the line? Can I dance on the line? And that's what we're talking about now is Leclerc's going, well, the line's moved because that should be a complete no-go. He's like, well, if that's kind of getting let in and I've got a precedent now to work off, can I be a bit cheekier when defending? So I think, and to be honest, like I completely agree with it. It should be, the lay of the land should be exactly the same for each driver. It doesn't matter where you are in the championship, what position your car is. If you're fighting at the back to get out of 20th, it should be exactly the same kind of rules. It shouldn't matter that it's the first and second car. And we go, oh, we got past anyway, so let's not even review it now. Like, it's so hard because you want the right result and you want it to be fair for everyone.
When Lewis and Max had that collision. But the corners before that on lap one, Max did the same thing. Lewis was actually past him on track but had the inside line and went so deep into the corner, you know, that little S section before you get onto the hangar straight. So he's got form and he's done it before. I just think because the championship's so tight between these guys at the moment, that's probably ultimately why the stewards let it go. But you're totally right when Carlos says, well, it's got ramifications now the lines are moved. I think the stewards and Michael Massa will be scratching their head going, they're going to have a plan going into this weekend if that sort of driving occurs again. But I think we're going to get ultimately a statement like you cannot move while braking. You cannot change your line off, you know, and I think that's what they're going to have to do in order to fix the situation. So,
yeah, it brings up the point though, because the stewards are different week to week. Do we need consistent stewards every single race going forward, where like a Michael Massey who is there every single race weekend? This is kind of who's available, who's an ex-driver, who's a kind of cobble together
race
our
director
stewards.
is
That's why we're getting
supposed to
inconsistency,
be
surely.
You know, consistent, unifying between everything, and he's the ultimate
unifying.
One that makes all the calls. Yes, he may not make the decisions for the stewards, but he has veto power over all those things and can make those decisions.
Yeah. But I suppose if you've got like Damon Hill versus, say, Jenson Button as your driver steward, like you're going to get completely different thoughts depending on which country the person came from, let alone what happened on track. And that's kind of the issues. The more people you bring into it, I feel, the worse it gets. So I would like to see a rotation of 5 maybe and 3 each week kind of who work, and you kind of get like a couple of weeks off here and there, but consistent 5 people over the course of a year that are the stewards, not just this cobbled together, oh, you used to drive, like, do you want to come have a go? Like, you haven't driven for ages, but you used to. Just surely you know what we're talking about. Like, I know it's more involved than that, but that's kind of how it feels. I'm sure the drivers feel the same way, and the teams definitely do.
Massey and the stewards, we want consistency from weekend to weekend. And, you know, the big thing is track limits. But racing like this, to the letter of the law, Max did the wrong thing. So why didn't he get a penalty? Now, do I think he should have got one? No, because we want them to race. We want them to go hard. We want them to push each other as to the absolute limit. But to the letter of the law, he should have got a penalty, really. So why didn't he get a penalty, and what was the decisions behind it? And that's the information that we don't get. The problem is you go into a media this weekend, this is fascinating TV for a press conference. Let's put Toto and Christian right there as Toto's arguing about the way that Max is driving, and Red Bull are going, well, you've got a dodgy wing and we're trying to fight this, explain these scratch marks here or there and everywhere. So, I mean, we're almost getting entertained by the lack of decision-making from the top brass.
Yeah.
Yep, you're exactly right, Tommy T. I'm just doing some research now. There is a panel of stewards that are appointed for the race, 3 of which are FIA. owned, I suppose, or not owned, wrong word, but you know what I mean. Three of them, and one's chosen from the home racetrack. And the clerk of the course is also nominated by the home team. So the starter and Michael Massey are the two who are consistent at every race. And there's a panel that's chosen around there. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think those three FIA stewards who are owned by the FIA now, well done, James, I think there's some consistency there because I know that also, and Campy had listened to my interview with Scott Elkins, who's the deputy race director for F1 sometimes, but then takes a lead for F2 and F3, that they try to be as consistent as possible. And so there's a lot of conversation going on all the time. I think it's the driver's steward that could be bloody Johnny Herbert, Uncle Johnny or whoever else, that depending on the type of racing that they have had and also how long they've been out of a Formula One car or whatever kind of car for, that can really be an interesting side. And there's always going to be some inherent bias depending on who it is, depending on the nationality. So there's just a lot of play here. Absolutely.
And like the standings, I think that plays into it. Like I think they consider that genuinely, like who it is. If it's at the back of the pack and there's no championship ramifications, give them a penalty, whatever. But they've had to consider it so heavily because this, like we talked about Belgium. Where was that classified race, that wet one? Belgium. If it's like, so that's already like that. We don't want to have another thing in this championship where there's another asterisk potential because of this kind of call made by the stewards. We want it to be on-track racing. We don't want it to be these, I don't know, people sitting at keyboards.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, no penalty was given. I think that's fair enough. Let's talk about this rear wing debacle because in Q3, Max's rear wing was being tested, which I thought was interesting. It's the first time, as the commentators noted, that we'd seen that kind of action happening in a live qualifying session. Campy, do you know much more about what Red Bull are accusing Mercedes of doing with the lower plate of the rear wing?
It's on the extremity of the rear wing. There seems to be some scratch marks or some scratch marks on the. So on the bottom, you've got your DRS flap, which goes up and down.
Yep.
And then you've got like the face of the rear wing where the gap is, but then that curves down and up underneath the opening. So you can't see it from the naked eye, but there's some scratching in there, which would suggest that there's some movement and some play in this flap when it's opening, closing, and or when it's fully closed. Now that could be anything from damage. We don't really know. Red Bull has provided a photo to the media, but not even they can figure out what's going here. All they know is that when there's 250 kilos or in excess of, at 250k an hour, the kilo rating on it is around 70 to 80 kilos. There is something happening that they can't understand. So particularly after Hungary, they noticed a massive jump in Mercedes front light speed. And since then, particularly in the last 3 or 2 races and this weekend, there's been an exponential gap from what their top speed used to be to what it is now. So I'm telling you, if they can't figure out what's going on, if Newey and Red Bull can't figure it out, I'm telling you, Mercedes have got something working for them that no other teams even probably thought of, conceptualised. It's probably a bit like the whatever they had last year. I can't remember the name of it now. It was DAS. So, I mean, look, but that's what you want from F1. It's always about innovation and not skirting the rules, but not deliberately breaking them, but operating within the rules in which the FIA and F1 set out, and then there's some areas around that which are open to interpretation how they fix it.
Well, put your tinfoil beanie on, Campy, because you mentioned DAS. I just want to bring this up. There is some video footage of Lewis Hamilton's cockpit in Brazil where it does look like the steering wheel moved forward, that he pulled something and there is movement. Whether or not it's camera trickery and G-force or whether or not something has happened, jump across to Reddit team. That's where you will find that's where I saw it. And it was an interesting discussion, but there potentially, as you say, Campy, there is something that's happened recently to have a significant pace increase. And potentially there's something to do with that. What it does, who knows? I'm sure that we will be given the full rundown when the regulations change and they come out the other end and go, ha! This is what we did. You guys suck.
And what we do know is it's not going to be sorted out in the next month.
No way.
If Red Bull make a protest, the FIA and F1 doesn't have enough time to go and figure out what they're actually doing and issue a technical directive before the last two. Right? It's just not going to happen because Mercedes will play the long game and they'll hold it up in court and tribunals and blah, blah, blah. They've got the money to spend because they've obviously found something. But, it may have been something that they stumbled upon for next year's design. They go, oh shit, maybe we can put that in this year. But this is F1. It's what happens. It's what we expect from Mercedes. Now, Mercedes, unlike the last 6 years in the turbo hybrid era, they haven't gone on a tear this season where they've gone and won like 7 or 8 races on the track and dominated qualifying, ones and twos. I think we're going to see Mercedes go on for the last week and the next 3 races, the last 4 races. They'll go on a tear, and Red Bull won't be able to touch them if we're looking at, sort of the previous 6 years' form. And that's the way it's looking like with this design. And, good on them for doing it. Yeah. That's what they're working towards. They've been challenged massively this year, but I think they walk away with it, particularly on Lewis Hamilton's pace last night. That last lap. Oh, my God. Where did that come from? I think I said on the chat, what on earth was that? That was mega.
Yeah, that is the true sense of the term mega. I think it's been banded around a lot with his championship wins in recent years, but that lap put together, as you say, mega, incredible, on rails. Reminiscent of Valtteri Bottas 2019 Australia. There you go, Tommy. Just got to get it in somewhere. Let's talk about
Valtteri 2.0.
Valtteri 3.1. Let's talk about quali then, because the first point that I want to talk about is Yuki Tsunoda. He's really tying it together. In Q1, he was outperforming Gasly. Of course, that's not how it finished up with Q3. And fair enough, Gasly's a better driver, but. Yeah. So it seems though that it's coming back to Yuki, and of course we know that under lights in the desert at the beginning of the year, he had a good showing. Potentially, this is just a kind of racing that he really enjoys. Tommy T.
Yeah, likes it. I don't know, under lights, different. But no, you're right. He definitely had the pace, and we know he's got that raw talent. It's been consistency. This is the point that we've brought up all throughout the year, and he hasn't put it together. Consistent weekends. You'd have one flash kind of practice session where he's on fire, and then it just drops away, and he just qualifies poorly. But fingers crossed that this is actually him getting it together, and we do see some improvement. And he's around for a while now. We would assume, he's not going anywhere. So this is what we want to see. We want to see someone who can put the car close to their teammate, like Campy's always mentioned. If you can be within that kind of 0.3 at worst, that's kind of where you want to sit. You always want to be that close to your teammate, and he has been so far off Gasly this year.
It's like anyone. Once you get time in that car and consistency, he got re-signed for next year, so mentally he's like, I don't have to worry about how poorly I'm performing. These guys are capable drivers if they're in the World Championship. So, look, it doesn't surprise me that he's starting to get some results on paper that look better than what he's been doing. Is he on par with Gasly? Absolutely not. Just should he be pushing Gasly and competing with him? Yes, he should be, but do we expect that of a first-year driver? Do we give these guys a couple of years now to grow into it? Yesteryear of F1, absolutely not. If you hadn't performed within 6 races, you were out. Right, who's in next? This is a waste of money. Teams are taking a long-term investment, on some of these younger kids, because they are kids. They're 18, 19, 20, 21, which is staggering that organisations are willing to put these young people and throw so much money at them, from a business standpoint. But, hey, they're getting the job done. So, congratulations to Yuki. Well done.
Let's talk about Fernando Alonso, because he back, baby, 5th. Obviously soft tyre, not the medium, but the pace of that Alpine really picking up. This is kind of that sort of Fernando that we remember, Campy. He's got a point to prove, and as I said up the top, I think personally the outperforming of Ocon is significant enough that Alpine should be taking a look at where this contract is for Ocon for next year. For 2023, and regardless that he's an Australian, be seriously going, well, we need to be looking at putting Oscar Piastri in. Sorry, actually, quick sidebar. The other sad news, obviously, is now that Danny Kvyat is not going to be the reserve driver for Alpine. So bye-bye, Daniel. So it's they'll be looking at this because Alonso's now finding his rhythm, Campy.
Look, Alonso's had some great qualifying. I think he put it in fifth, 3 races ago, and got tagged on the first lap, so we missed that. So dropped back to the rear of the field. Can't remember where that was, but look, Fernando's he's still got some skills. He's a racer at heart, and it's great to see him up in 5. Hopefully, he gets a start tomorrow night and puts himself up into 3rd, because that Alpine or the Renault is that's like.
He'll just go around the whole outside of the track.
On that one?
Some of the things that Lewis has gotten away with on lap corner 1, in the last few years. So I don't think look, Alonso's awesome. I hope he gets a start tonight and puts himself on the podium and holds it, because that, as I said, that Alpine's got some genuine pace this weekend, which shouldn't be surprising to us. Last year they were fighting for that 3rd, 4th and 5th. Yep. I think they ultimately came out 5th, but they had a string of races, 7 or 8 races, where they were clearly the 3rd best grid on the car, so...
It's so smooth now.
Oh, how good is it? We just need to stop laughing.
Sorry.
So it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at some certain tracks that car's really quick. So this is one of those tracks which is definitely beneficial for the Renault.
I think it was just impressive to see that he was on it from the very, very start of qualifying. He was determined, and how big the gap was to Ocon. That was the other staggering thing, is like, you're in the same machinery and Ocon is just, he cannot find the pace. Probably similar to what we'll talk about, I suppose, with the Ferraris, how different they were. Like, the pace difference was insane. Alonso just was finding grip where no one else was almost on that track, because they found it. I don't know. The Alonso of old, and I think everyone on the internet was very excited for Alonso as well. He was the one that won qualifying, I think. If Reddit was scoring,
they're the outliers. They're the outliers at the moment because they're powered by their own power unit, and they don't power anyone else. They've got obviously completely, the Beluga Peugeot mouth philosophy on the airbox. There's lots of things that could potentially go really well for the car if they tied it together and carried forward that. If the regulations hadn't have changed, what they would have done with Daniel last year, of course, as Campy mentioned before, in terms of how quick that car was, they potentially could have been easily in 3rd position, challenging at the front for 1st and 2nd, but obviously not the case. It's important, though, for Alpine to have this kind of attitude. It's a shame, though, for Alonso now has 4 cars to overtake and Vettel has 9, so Vettel is going to probably take over that overtake championship thing. But both Alpine and AlphaTauri tied on 112 points for 5th and 6th, and the only reason Alpine's ahead is because Ocon had that win in Hungary. For them, I mean, look at the starting grid. We've got Gasly ahead of Alonso and Tsunoda ahead of Ocon. Yeah. Like, it's really just they're the battles that are going to be really interesting, I think, when it comes to the race itself, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Tommy T, you mentioned Ferrari versus McLaren there. Lando Norris in 6th ahead of Carlos Sainz in 7th. Danny Rick with a woeful qualifying in 14th, of course, and Leclerc in 13th. So it's one McLaren ahead of a Ferrari at the front, and then a Ferrari ahead of McLaren up back. This is, obviously it's the first time we're coming to the circuit, but as I said last week, the Ferrari power now, the deficit that they're building to this McLaren has been interesting. They're now well and truly in 3rd place with a 287.5 points to McLaren's 256. They will run away with it, I think, for 3rd position, which will be a bit of a shame. But in terms of what Norris can do to keep these Ferraris behind, because they're fairly similar when it comes to corner speed. It just now seems that this old Mercedes PU thing of, they're faster in the straight lines now in the bin compared to the Ferrari straight line speed, and how he can manage it, because we've seen how he's able to keep people like Valtteri Bottas at Monza.
Even if the straight line speed isn't the same, I still think it's the exit of the corners where they're faster. They pick up through those gears back to a top speed quicker than any other car on the grid almost. Like, even faster than Mercedes, and that's why they're hard to get past. And that's what we saw Bottas last week behind Daniel, and we've seen at Monza. We've seen these places where where the track is helpful in that aspect of not being too wide and not having massive DRS straights, you can, with less power on the straights, keep them behind by just getting out early on those corners and building back up those leads. And I think that's what Norris is going to have to do because, like you're right, Sainz is going to be right there on those straights. And
what do you reckon, Campy?
Yeah, look, I just don't think it's one of those tracks where you'll be able to pass tonight. So, yes, Tommy's right in saying the characteristic of the McLaren is to be able to hold it, but I just don't think. I mean, there's too many medium speed corners in this track where they're downshifting before a corner to get the optimum gear and traction out of it. Their pace has been really, really lacking all weekend. They haven't looked like a good car. It was a surprise to me that Leclerc qualified where he did. I think both Ferraris will end up in I think they'll split each other. I don't think Leclerc and Ricciardo can get back to Carlos and Lando, but it's a bit of a shame for McLaren, really. They've been in the fight, but they just haven't had their tracks. I mean, their chance was really Monza and Russia to get that massive points deficit to Ferrari, and it just didn't work out that way. So, look, it's a shame. I think the Ferraris, Jeff, definitely a quicker car on this track, but Danny Rick's got a new chassis this weekend, which, just moving on to the McLaren, I don't. Danny Rick had nothing. In qualifying. Nothing. I think he improved 2/10 from his first lap in Q3 to his last lap in Q2. I mean, Lando found 1.1 seconds. Lando's last lap in Q1 was spectacular.
Yeah, really good.
As I said, 1.1, almost 1.2 tenths from the start of Q3. Just tells me there's something going on with that Merc motor in the McLaren. Just because we've seen what Hamilton can do, obviously, but just because you get the engine and you get all the same modes they get, doesn't necessarily get all the technology and software and the IT that runs that Mercedes engine, which I think they've just had it for so long that they understand them all. McLaren, this is the first year with the Merc in that car, so hence why we're seeing probably the difference in output. Output efficiency is clearly different from Mercedes to McLaren, but the output of the engine, I think there's still a deficit between the two as well because they don't have all the internals sorted out, which is a real shame, I think. So
yeah, hopefully we can get that sorted out for next year.
Yeah.
What happened with these bloody double-waved yellows, Campy? Because if you look at the onboard for Verstappen, on the right-hand side of the track, which is coming into the final corner along the main straight, where after Pierre Gasly, of course, ripped his front wing off over one of those outer curbs, which are very vicious, absolutely, which pierced his tyre. He then, front right tyre, then pulled over to the side, which was off the racing line, and there was a yellow, and then there wasn't a yellow, and then there was a yellow again, and then there wasn't a yellow again. If you look at the onboard with Max, on the right-hand side, there's 2 green flags on the electronic boards, but on the left, there is some dude waving 2 yellow flags who clearly didn't get the memo about it being absolutely fine. Now, afterwards, of course, we've had more drivers with Bottas, Verstappen, and Sainz being called to the stewards. But how did you see it, Campy? I mean, if you don't have any yellow flags or any yellow lights flashing up on your dashboard, is that then up to the FIA and the track team to say, well, guys, you're supposed to be sending the same message across all of the systems, including those double-waved yellow flags, the physical flags over on the left-hand side of the track?
Well, the problem is you've got human error here. And if there is yellows anywhere on the track, regardless of what's on your dash, regardless of the electronic, if there's a man waving 2 yellow flags, you've got to slow down. And that's the rules. And we do that for safety. But there is an intermittent lag between, the decisions and how they're being protested. We saw on screen, we definitely had a Sector 3 yellow flag show up, which should automatically mean everyone behind Gasly on their last lap automatically has their lap deleted if they are in sector 3 of the track, because they have to slow down, therefore they can't improve. The biggest one for me, I mean, it's hard because it flashed up for about a second and a half and then was taken down. It said track clear. So I can understand the marshal is going, yep, yellows, wave them. So, secondary, he probably takes 2 or 3 seconds to grab his flag, start waving them. And then he goes, oh, no, it's not. Oh, really? Are we correcting that? So, there's always going to be human latency in those, regardless of the electronic things. The one for me is Norris. Norris should be the one directly affected by that because he's the immediate car behind Gasly on track. So I'm not sure why Gasly wasn't summoned to the steward. Norris wasn't summoned to the stewards and his lap time was deleted as well, because that to me doesn't make sense. He was flying past Gasly on the straight, and we don't know whether there was someone waving yellows into that last turn. It was speculated on the broadcast, but we just don't know. But every other car behind them had to slow down, so why didn't Norris? I don't quite understand that. He was the car directly behind Gasly, albeit 5 or 6 seconds behind him, or 10 seconds behind him realistically. So anyway, look, it's an interesting one. I'm not sure. I think the stewards might have missed one of those somewhere. It's one of those ones like, don't mention it on the broadcast because the stewards won't pick it up.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see what happens, of course, although it shouldn't necessarily affect where Verstappen starts.
No.
If, to be honest, he wants to be in third, so maybe he wants that that time deleted, although then Bottas would also say, anyway, whatever, it would just all play out that way.
Bottas would have been on for second too, so he was only, a tenth and a half down on Hamilton's time at the time.
Better for Mercedes for Bottas to start in third, quite honestly, and take Max's attention away from Lewis. That's absolutely it. All right, well, let's see how the grid starts, shall we? Hamilton in first, of course. Max in second. As I said, he really wanted to start in third like he did in Mexico because he just went around the outside and led for the rest of the race. Bottas was on pretty much all weekend, Campy. He was leading all the the practice sessions as well. He just couldn't get it quite tied together. But, of course, we know Hamilton was on it. That last lap, as you say, was mega. It wasn't too far off, though, Valtteri Bottas.
I mean, he was 0.6 off. I mean, you got to take that last lap that got deleted into account. Yeah. He was right there, 10th and a half after 2 sectors. So, I mean, he would have ended up second on the grid, Verstappen in third. I think it probably works out for Merck, as you said, Jim. So, yeah, look, Valtteri, I mean, he's good, but he's coming up against, I did listen to that interview with him as well.
Good.
On Beyond the Grid, and cracking interview. But, yeah, I mean, he's totally a competent driver in this sport. Excellent. To even compete with Lewis Hamilton is no mean feat in itself. And to do it week in, week out, he hasn't had the consistency throughout the 5 years that he's been there. But, I mean, we've seen he's in this purple patch, really, since he signed that contract, and he's performed exactly where the team wanted him to perform. Yep. And I think for Mercedes, the key for the race is that he's going to be able to play a big role tomorrow night, whereas Red Bull don't have Perez to do so.
Yeah, the only concern that I have is that something happens to him, he gets spun around again, and that loses out. But Sergio Perez starts in 11th, but certainly Bottas, the stronger of the second drivers. Tommy T, Pierre Gasly starts in 4th, yet another bloody solid weekend so far for him. What do you think we can expect from him in that? I mean, is he really going to try and play a bit of a team Honda game here, or is he going to do his own thing?
I don't think he will. He doesn't know that team anything, does he, really?
No, he does not.
No, I think he'll just do the same thing he always does. He'll try and stay as close to those leaders as he can while extending a gap between the pack and not having a DRS train form behind him. If he can stay out ahead of those next cars, he can just run his own race, pit when is optimal, and just run that computer-generated strategy to perfection. And that's kind of what they want, don't they?
Interesting to see what happens. Well, I was going to say it's interesting to see what happens because he's red stripes off tyres, so he's going to have a bit of an advantage on the start to Bottas, Max, and Lewis. So, again, I hope he doesn't get intertangled with Bottas. But, I mean, we know he's a good starter. Could there potentially be some issues for Valtteri or for Max if he gets himself up in the mix by turn
definitely.
one?
That would be lovely. That's a great way to start a race. Let's do that. I would prefer that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Book that in.
He is French. His hands will go up in the air at some stage and go,
Good. There it is.
Could be tonight.
Fernando Alonso,
I'm a bit dirty on the French, actually. They beat the All Blacks this morning. I'll tell you what, that English referee, Rain Barnes, what an absolute dud of a referee that guy is. Only a Pom would make some of those decisions. Jeez.
Love it.
So I was ready to rage on the French this morning. I wasn't too happy with them, but good on them. They played well.
Oh, okay, good. Well, not a bad thing for Fernando Alonso's French team in fifth. Lando Norris starts in sixth, ahead of Carlos Sainz in seventh. Yuki Tsunoda in eighth, again, soft tyre as well, for ahead of Ocon, who's also on the softs. Seb Vettel in 10th, ahead of Sergio Perez. Now, Perez is really out of position here, Campy. Like, it's no good for Red Bull, who are really chasing down both Constructors and Drivers' Championship. It's going to put the pressure on. Do you think that's going to be the thing that actually sends Lewis to the front without, that second driver for Red Bull being able to play a strategy game here?
No, I don't think so. I think Lewis will probably win, and I think BB will probably come second. I don't think Perez can play a role. Look, he's been off the pace this weekend. Interestingly, I think it was Ant Davidson or maybe Paul DiResta who took us through the lap. The car looked great.
Yeah.
Looked on rails, looked like he's doing it. Yes, he wasn't using the curbs like he probably should have. Could have used a bit more curb, extend that racing line, carry a bit more entry and exit speed. But, I mean, there has been some drivers that have struggled on this track for whatever reason this weekend. And, we got Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo and himself, top 3, top 4 teams on the grid. And at least one of their drivers is struggling. So, it doesn't surprise me either.
Tommy T,
on a new track.
The difference, though, with Sergio is that he's raced here before and he's won here before. GP2 Asia, Nico Hülkenberg as well. There's only 2 people on this grid who have raced here before. Mazepin's one of them, and Sergio Perez. So as Ricardo said, home team advantage, you don't get
that
to
helped
do
him
FP1.
a lot.
Well, it didn't matter because he didn't even get into the top 10. But it's interesting, isn't it? So I wonder the way that he was driving, instead of learning like everyone else, he just found, recalled what he was doing in that GP2 car. And as Campy said, playing a little safer, not sending it outside the curbs like a lot of other people were doing, I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing. Perez, that car definitely has the pace around here in comparison to the teams, the 4 ahead of him at least. He should be, unsure, but that's definitely going to make Max's life harder. I think that's obviously the main thing that Red Bull's thinking about. They're like, it sucks for Perez, but really, that screwed Max a lot for tomorrow's strategy and just limits everything he can do. That's going to be the biggest thing.
And he's going Campy.
No, you're right.
I was going to say, and he's in a campus sandwich. 2 Aston Martins on either side of him. My favourite campus sandwich, which was interesting for Aston Martin because they had a little bit more pace on those soft tyres. Seb out the front.
Campus sandwich. What the heck is that?
And Stroll behind him. But look, Seb Vettel is gonna defend hard. Yep. And if this is the kind of track that there's not gonna be any overtaking, then Perez is screwed. Because you look at who's ahead of him, and there's not going to be any easy overtakes for him.
I'll just say that, in quali 2, Q1 and Q2, there was a second between the top 15 drivers, or 9 tenths, which is what we want to see on the grid, right? So, which I think that indicates to a race pace, it's going to be mega tough to overtake, particularly if there's a DRS train somewhere along the grid. But can we talk about track limits for 2 seconds, please?
Yes, let's go.
This is the perfect track to get track limits right on and just say, hey, the white line's the line. Don't stuff it up. The amount of times I saw every driver get over the white lines and, that's not a problem there, and then, no, this corner, that. It's like, what on earth are we doing? We got a curb, then we got some green concrete, painted to look nice. It's not AstroTurf. It's like, geez, this is the perfect race to just say, if both wheels are off, your lap's deleted. And it would actually make the track a lot more raceable, and in my opinion, because it would force drivers to not, push the boundary so much. And I think they've missed a perfect opportunity to get what the fans want right when it comes to track limits. Why do they only care about it on a
That was beautiful and succinct. I love that.
Yeah.
You, Campy.
That's the episode preview. There's the social preview.
Freya loves a rant, so there you go.
What was that about Kevin Durant?
She loves the rant.
Kevin Durant's better than
KD.
MJ as well. Man, you are just changing. First LeBron, now Kevin Durant. I just did not expect it.
So that's 12th in
So it's Harden.
for Stroll. 13th, LeBron James starts there. What do you think LeBron, Tommy T, can do from there?
LeBron.
Oh, no, sorry, Leclerc. Wrong
He'll choke. He'll choke. He's 4 from 1.
Leclerc does not like starting from the back. We know this, and this is one of my favorite takes, is that he gets the red mist and just does stupid stuff. So if he can, and he can clear away and get some safety cars for other people like Daniel, that'd be lovely. He does not know.
He's a Monegasque. He's got some French in him a fair bit. So
it's not incorrect.
But again, out of position along with Danny Rick in 14th, who is ahead of George Russell. This is how far back he is in 15th. Mr. Saturday, there it was again. It's disappointing to hear it from the commentators. We know also, though, that obviously the last couple of races now for both Alfa Romeo drivers, Kimi Räikkönen in 16th and Giovinazzi in 18th, with our favourite Canadian in between them.
He was good. Latifi was good.
Yes,
he did not get his last lap in time. I think it was some traffic or something, but he was ahead of Russell at every stage, and then Russell would improve. So I think very unfair on Latifi. I think he definitely had the opportunity to beat his teammate and get into the next qualifying. So good things for him next year. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's going to be the nicest grid on the team. So that's what we want to hear and see. Absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see what Williams are doing with the development they get, that extra time in wind tunnel, because they're further down the grid than anyone else. But of course, Alfa Romeo further down than them. And with someone like Valtteri Bottas coming in with some interesting information around the 2022 car for Mercedes, whilst it might not be so up to date anymore. And as he said on that podcast, no one's spoken to him in the last month about it. But at least last year they were probably talking about it. Will be interesting to see what Alfa can do. And of course, the very back, Mazepin in 20th and Schumacher in 19th.
I'll just say Mazepin was 2.5 seconds behind Schumacher. I know he didn't get a lot of lap time this weekend. That is unacceptable.
So slow.
Long way back. And what it probably means, and that's your starting grid for tomorrow morning our time, or Sunday if you're listening anywhere else in the world. But for this track, let's talk about this track, because this is one of the things to watch out for in the race. Campy, do you think we're going to see any overtaking? Because it's a quick lap time, and if everyone's sitting within, DRS trains, then we're potentially going to catch someone like Mazepin very quickly, and it's going to be an interesting back marker very quickly kind of race.
No, I don't think we'll see a lot of overtaking. As I said before, I think if we had track limits right, we would have had, this race would have been a lot more raceable and interesting for the viewers to watch at home. I think it would have probably slowed them down by upwards of a second and a half, 2 seconds. So now then we're talking about, 1:33s as a qualifying time. I think that just makes it a lot. Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be tough for people to overtake. I think it'll be a boring track. I think it'll produce a boring race. In saying that, I like this track.
Yeah.
It's great. The onboards are cracking.
It's got off in the way, isn't it? They're good to drive and they're good to watch, but they're shocking for racing.
Can I just say I'm looking forward to Jeddah. Dear Lord, that track looks incredible. Not that I like video games, or I would tell any of the listeners to go and play it. I watched a few of them, a few race plays on F1 2021, and I just think we're in for an absolute cracker of a race at that track. That track has got everything you want.
Yeah, it's got everything you want except for a physical track.
Except it's not done.
Which is probably...
it's not there.
It's like,
we're just going to
nice, but
is it really that bad?
Mate,
is it
there's no
still get bitumen and walls and that's
still
it?
not completed yet. That's so...
When are we going there? 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
Yep. Right down to the wire. Love that. It's like, I wonder if we'd had all year planning to build it. Anyway, but yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see the physical element of the track, I think, as well, because it's third race in a row. It's quite quick. It's technical. It's fun. There's a lot of G's through that last sort of technical section, and especially with Hamilton's on board. He's just in 7th for every corner.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of G. It's gonna be interesting to see at the end of the race.
It's like Magello.
Yeah, how tired these guys are, because that might also play into it as well. And they'll be very happy for the break, I can only imagine. Of course, we've mentioned this, but Max's start's going to be important to see where he goes, of course. But Valtteri Bottas, I think, starting in third on the clean side of the track, so to speak, will be interesting to see if he can just get in behind Lewis and stay there. Perez, as we've mentioned, starts outside the top 10. Does that, help Red Bull at all? No, not even in the bloody slightest.
Sorry, it will help because he gets tyre choice to the to the Gasly back in the 10 rule on softs, so that will help him strategy-wise.
Yep, absolutely. Good point. Well
he
raised.
May have a role to play later in the race.
Well, it'll be interesting too, Campy, to see what the tyres do, because we know it's nighttime running potential. It's obviously slightly cooler than during the day, but the softs might last a little bit longer than people are expecting. And of course, obviously with that yellow striped medium tyre, if Perez can't get past those soft runners quickly, then, he might burn those tyres up following along in that turbulent air.
Yeah, look, I think it'll be a one-stop. Degradation's not huge from what we've seen, particularly the race sims in P2. So it'll be a soft to hard or medium to hard, really.
Yeah, interesting. It will be very interesting to watch. And of course, AlphaTauri and Alpine, that's probably going to be the most interesting battle outside of Max and Lewis. Just to see how they josh around the place. But Fernando Alonso and Pierre Gasly, that's going to be a bloody good battle to watch. Gasly in fourth, Alonso in fifth. That's where my eyes will be, because Danny Rick is too far down the back for me to be able to try and find him.
We got a decent run into turn one, and turn one's going to be interesting. It's going to be a bit like a Barcelona start, I think. A Suzuka start where, you do not brake until you've actually passed the apex of the first corner, and then you trail brake until you're almost into turn two. So I think a lot of the drivers will be, looking to get a really good start because there's a bit of a run. It's not massive. It could be longer. I'd always prefer a longer start, but just depending on some of the lines you can take into turn one, we can see them take all this pace in and brake really late in the corner. So, that could be a cracking start for Danny Rick, because we know he's got his starts dialed at the moment. So it wouldn't surprise me if he jumped up, 7-8 positions off.
Wow! All right. So. Why don't let's just jump up 12 positions straight into second. Good. Well, look, that's all to come, of course. This is a dumb time to watch a Formula One race. 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Daylight Time, or wherever we are time on the eastern side of this country. Hopefully it's a better time for you. Would be, unless you live in New Zealand. And look, thanks very much for listening. Guys, thank you for your time, of course, in this. We're going to have a bright and early podcast for your ears, for your listening pleasure tomorrow. We will be podcasting pretty much straight after the race.
I think that means red flags.
Don't say it.
Just on pass.
Let's say this now. If it's a red flag event, I'm going to bed and then getting up and doing the podcast. Because as soon as there's a red flag, going to bed. Can't be bothered. That was that Bahrain too with Grosjean, who's obviously luckily okay, but that just hurt.
Yeah.
Big time.
Brazil no, we didn't have Brazil last year. What was the other race where red flag happened? Was Mugello or
Sparta Bremer too.
Monza.
All of them, wasn't it? At some point, there's just so many red flags. Anyway, look, thanks so much for listening. Please go and jump over to our Discord server if you haven't already. You can chat with all of us during the race. That's where we'll be. And also, don't forget to update your fantasy team names. Here's a little bit of a teaser for you. At some point in the next couple of weeks, we are going to have a very special guest as an interviewee, a first non-Australian interviewee on the podcast in the form of Josh Revel, who I will be
love that dude.
I like that Campy said, "Who is it?" Even though we spoke about this only a couple of days ago.
I forgot.
But that interview will be out on Monday the 6th of December, ahead, of course, of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. No, it won't, because it'll be out after the Abu Dhabi. Oh, look, it's going to be out at some point, all right? Bloody Jeddah and everything else. It's all going to be too much. But anyway.
Go and watch your Josh Revel videos.
Catch up. Our favourite New Zealander, Campy in the Bin, Josh Revel promoted. Well, thanks to you. We will chat in only a couple of hours' time as we review the Qatar Grand Prix. How are you enjoying your new stands, your new mic stands, lads?
Oh, you're using it, Tommy?
I like it.
See it.
Yeah, how good is it? It's got.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's good. Just stays attached to my desk all the time.
It's good for you, Campy, because you love playing with that bloody thing. It's your favourite thing to do is move the microphone, and that stand does not make any noise.
It doesn't.
It's shocking in front of a camera.
You are just a fiddler on the roof.
Yeah.
You fiddler on the roof.